So I want to get into this relationship with Joe Jackson and Cheryl Terrell. So as the Michael Jackson movie is coming out now, more stories surrounding the family and they're growing up and the allegations of abuse and all these other things are coming out now. I really want to dive a little deeper into that affair that Joe Jackson had. So as we all know, Joe and Catherine Jackson was, the patriarch and the matriarch of the Jackson family, produced the Jackson Five, Janet Jackson, and the great Michael Jackson. So, Joe and Catherine were married for 69 years. Now, that's almost unheard of in this day and age. 69 years is a long time to be together. Um, so shout out to that union. But as you know, she put up with a lot. And I don't even know if we have them kind of women anymore because back then they were groomed to be married that long and to deal with a lot. A lot of the ones nowadays, not really. So although they were married for that long a period of time, towards the end of Joe Jackson's life, because as you know, Catherine is still alive, they were living apart. Joe was living in Las Vegas and Catherine remained in California and that worked for them. So as you know, Joe met Cheryl Terrell when she was in her early 20s. They met at a Christmas party for the LAPD because, Cheryl worked for them as a secretary at the time. And apparently Joe Jackson was just smitten with her and he pursued her. She was aware that he was married. But around 1973 is when they got together. And a year later, in 1974, their daughter Giovanni was born. Now, Joe set up Cheryl to live about 5 miles away from their own family home that he shared with him, Catherine, and their 9 children. They had 10 altogether. They had in no particular order. They had Janet, Rebe, Latoya, Jermaine, Jackie, Tito, Marlon, Randy. They had one Brandon that passed away, and I think I named them all. But they lived in the family home, and then he had that outside child, Giovanni. Now, when he was with the Jacksons, he was bent on making them famous. Discipline. Everything was discipline. He wanted a managerial relationship. He didn't want to cross the line between dad, so he made them call him Joseph. Now, imagine being a child and you want your dad and you want to call your father dad, but he's like, no, call me Joseph just for business reasons. That has to be heartbreaking for those kids. So that's a lot of trauma that they had to deal with. And even though it produced one of the greatest groups of all time and some of the greatest artists of all time, so, Janet is great in her own and legendary in her own right, that has to be heartbreaking for them. But he had them call him that. But, 5 miles away in this home that he had with Cheryl, he allowed his daughter to call him daddy. Now, she said he was very loving and he was very present in their life. The mother made him a homemade meal and she always had dinner ready for him when he came because he spent a lot of time over at Cheryl's house. She said she always seen him, and every Christmas he spent with Cheryl and Giovanni. Like he would take them to Orlando, Florida for Christmas. Now, as you know, Catherine is a devout Jehovah's Witness, so they didn't celebrate a lot of holidays. So that made it a lot easier for him to spend that time over there with Cheryl and Giovanni. And she said she was a daddy's girl. The icy cold man that we grew to know through the eyes of the Jacksons is not who she knew because he was very loving. He showered her with gifts, and she had a great childhood with Joe and Cheryl. Now, mind you, Cheryl was a loyal side chick. Now, they don't make them like that no more, or if they do, we don't know about them because they playing their position. But for 25 years, Cheryl was this man's side piece, and she knew about this family. Like they had to kind of live a secret life. Like they couldn't go into certain stores. They couldn't go into certain places, and Giovanni couldn't have friends over because of, Joe being scared that tabloids and reporters would sneak around and pick up on the story, which I'm surprised they didn't because it wasn't like he was exactly living secretly, but it was like in plain sight. Like some stuff you just do in plain sight, and people are so amazed that you would do something like that they don't think about that. But apparently they did, and they lived a good life. Now, after the 25 years that they was together, I guess Cheryl said that she got tired of it after a while. I guess after 25 years, you just get tired of being a side chick. I don't know why it took so long, but I guess that was a thing back then. You had to have a side family. I think we all have a grandfather or somebody went through that. My daddy was a Rolling Stone too, so I ain't even gonna hold you. But After all that time, she decided to end the 25-year relationship. But Giovanni said, she felt like a bastard child. She never got a chance to really meet her famous siblings. And when she did, they were really cold and they were really standoffish and they didn't really want a relationship outside of Reby, reaching out to her more. She said she did meet Janet once, but when Janet found out that she called their dad daddy, that did something for her. That triggered her, and she didn't really speak to Giovanni again. Now, I'm big on protecting your peace, living in your well being, and if that was a trigger for her and that sets her off, Janet has that right to feel how she feels. It's not the child's fault that she's here, but if she chooses not to engage, I mean, we can't make her just because the internet is saying that's wrong. She didn't choose to be here. And that's what protects her peace, because that's a trigger for her to this day with her dad. And that's some trauma that she had. She chooses to do that. And I'm okay with that. That's her well-being. She's private and she wants to keep it that way. Giovanni didn't like that. She felt iced out by the family and she didn't really have a relationship with them. So I know that she said she did meet Michael once, but of course, or maybe a few times, I can't remember. But of course, he didn't really want a relationship either. But as you know, Giovanni's mother died in 2014. Cheryl Terrell did pass away. And Giovanni said the only people that reached out to her was Reby and Katherine Jackson. Now, shockingly, her and Katherine Jackson have a close relationship, she says, to this day. And she refers to Katherine as mother because Katherine knew about the relationship. She found out about Cheryl and the child later on. And as a woman, she did try to file for divorce twice from Joe, but she didn't leave him. She rescinded the papers after she filed them. She's a Jehovah's Witness, and Joe knew she wasn't going to go nowhere. So he kept doing what he was going to do because he knew Katherine wasn't going nowhere. So, but Giovanni did say they have a relationship and she appreciated, but she doesn't have a relationship with her siblings. But again, I just wanted to bring that to the forefront again because it is really coming out now, and that's just an interesting storyline. And I know that's either going to be in part 2 of the movie, or they're going to make their own movie or their own series or whatever about that second life that Joe had with Giovanni and Cheryl Terrell. Because for him to have that much of a relationship for that amount of time and like live a normal life with them is crazy. So basically, her half siblings funded the lifestyle that he provided for her and her mother, and that is another heartbreak and another slap in the face to the Jackson children. And I know when they found out, they were a little taken aback by that as well. And I'm pretty sure they didn't appreciate that, so I wouldn't disregard their feelings. But let me know what you think. This is just my thoughts on that.